Guys, Dricus Du Plessis is defending against Khamzat Chimaev at this weekend, and I'll tell you, there's no better way to turn up that excitement than with my partners at DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, new customers who bet just $5 will get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Stay in on the action. Use your bonus bets in same-game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Love the thrill of live betting? Because DraftKings has got you covered. Bet live on in-progress games right as they happen. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy Sports and have a shot at cash prizes. This is your chance to get in on the action. Download the DraftKings app. When you sign up, use my code Sonnen. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Chimaev has got to win this fight. There's no way back. His career is essentially over if he doesn't get past Dricus. Now, that doesn't sound right to me. I mean, that sounds very extreme. I don't feel that he's remotely in a situation like that, but let me make the argument that the author of the article made. Said, look, it's taken Chimaev so long to secure a title fight. If he merely follows the path to get a second title fight that he already followed to this title fight, there's just not enough time. I don't see it that way at all. I don't even think that it's a factually correct statement. Chimaev secured a title fight years ago. Chimaev was offered a title fight years ago. And by years, I think we're about 20 months ago. But the night that Dricus fought Sean Strickland was supposed to be Chimaev versus Sean Strickland. And not only had Chimaev secured the fight with the rankings and the politics and within the mind of Dana and crew, he was offered the fight. Are you aware of that? Like, this isn't me saying that Chimaev should have got the fight. I'm saying he was offered the fight. He turned out he had a broken hand. Thank you, son. Turned out he had broken his hand. So, I just don't know how accurate that is. I mean, Chimaev was a massive ball of fire, and he seems to be right now. And this idea that Chimaev is hard to get to the ring. Chimaev was a victim of circumstance, for sure. Are you guys aware of that? Because there's been a lot of this talk going on. There's actually a thing right now. An article was written this morning as a celebration that Chimaev had landed in Chicago. And it was written from the perspective of, whew, well, we got one step down. As though he wouldn't show up, or as though he's got a history of not showing up to fights. There was a fight somewhere along the way, and I believe it was against Whitaker, where the fight was booked and Chimaev is the reason the fight didn't go off. I believe it was Whitaker, and then they just took that same fight and they did it a different date. I don't know what happened there. I was never told. But on the world title fight, he had a broken hand, victim of circumstance. He got hit by COVID very bad, if you guys remember. He was one of those guys that did a month in the hospital and had the respirator. And it was very touch and go. Is he ever even going to get out of this hospital room? And then he had to rebuild from there. And I'm just sharing that I don't know that there's an accuracy to that. We were told had travel restrictions. We were told. That wasn't completely confirmed, but enough that I think we believe it to be true. But there again, that wouldn't be on Chimaev. He was forced, according to the way the story was told, to fight on Fight Island. And they were going to Fight Island a couple times a year. So he was getting booked a couple of times a year. And I'm just sharing that with you because I'm very surprised the way the narrative has changed. And it doesn't make the narrative, I apologize, It won't make the outcome false, but we got to tell the story the way the story happened. We have to operate within, and then we can be rude, we can be polite, we can be mean, we can be nice, but we got to tell it the way that it happened. And this idea that, well, you never know with Chimaev is simply not true. As a matter of fact, there was even a week where they changed his opponent. In fact, they've done that to him twice. The day he debuted in the UFC, there was an opportunity 1 week later. He had no plan for that. It was at a different weight class. His coaches were not prepped for it. He was fine with it, and he went and did it. It's what got him on the map. But that happened to him again. He was scheduled to take on Nate Diaz. And was it the day before? Or was it 2 days before? And they switched his opponent, and he ended up being in there with Kevin Holland. And he ended up being in a different spot. It was a main event against Nate Diaz, and it ended up being a co-main event with Kevin Holland. Man, I'm just sharing, like, there was some really big changes. And the kind of guy that can adapt and flow with those changes is not the kind of guy that you have to question his willingness or his word. It's not the kind of guy where you've got to go, whew, he made it to Chicago. Not to mention, even within the confines of the story, if you choose to interpret it different, it had nothing to do with getting to Chicago. It had to do with getting a jet to land in the States, of which he's been in California, training with Coach Cal, Pico, Arman Sarukian, just to name drop for you, for a meaningful amount of time, 6 weeks. So there was never a question of would he get to Chicago or could he get to Chicago. It was a question of the U.S. and he did that 6 weeks ago. And I'm just surprised as to where this is coming from. Now, I do notice that these false narratives on Chimaev are greatly affecting the betting line. So if your overall argument is that Chimaev is in a harder fight than people originally thought. In fact, to go even further, Dricus could win this fight. Like, if that is your final argument, fine. And there's a number of things that you could argue that would make that statement very true, not to mention those boys are about to get in there and do it, and then we're all going to have the answer. But if things were to go awry, the answer is not within the narrative that has been laid out. And the idea that Chimaev is hard to get to the ring or commits to fights and then pulls out, with one exception. But that narrative is absolutely false.